If you're new to our channel, we'd love to have you join our little community. Just hit that subscribe button and turn on those notifications. We promise it will be worth your while.
I had a day off and decided to spend it shopping at the main Tonnacentrum. I was looking for a birthday present and wandered aimlessly through the department stores and shops, but couldn't find anything suitable. Suddenly, something unusual caught my eye. In a fashion store, I noticed a male mannequin wearing a skirt. A closer look revealed several men nearby who were also wearing skirts. Not men dressed as women, but skirts as a male garment. It took a while for this realization to sink in. Naturally, I was curious and took a closer look at the mannequin, trying not to stare too obviously at the people. The mannequin had on a simple knee-length skirt. Nothing you'd consider a skirt for men, like a kilt or a long Asian skirt. The skirt was plain, nothing special. Was that what made it special? No folklore, no tradition, just a skirt. Nothing to rely on. Like I'm a Scotsman. One of the men noticed my interest and approached me. "Hi, I'm Peter. Interested in a skirt?" Yes, no. I looked at him. He was wearing a denim miniskirt with a regular shirt. It didn't look feminine at all, and he wore his skirt with great confidence. Confused? Makes sense. Most men haven't even considered the topic of skirts. Yes, confused is the right word. I first thought these were... Don't worry, transvestites. Yeah. Many think that. But we don't wear skirts to be feminine. Skirts are common in many cultures, and many men used to wear them. Just think of Roman soldiers. Yes, true. But today? That's exactly the point. It's simply fashion. Women have conquered pants and we're reclaiming the skirt. Sounds interesting. Soon, I was engaged in a lively conversation, joined by Klaus and Michael. After a while, Peter asked, "So, don't you want to try one yourself?" I don't know. No guts? Oh, the classic line that can convince a man to do almost anything. Yes, I do, but... So, don't act so tough. You won't stand out here. Many men wear skirts. Yes, Okay, that was a yes. Here, try this one on. He handed me a brown skirt. It was a short skirt made of a leathery material, but not real leather, much softer. Kindly, they pushed me towards the changing room, and shortly after, I was alone behind the curtain. What now? I stood there indecisively for a moment, then told myself, what the heck? Just try on the skirt, and then change back immediately, I thought. I took off my pants and put on the skirt. It fit perfectly. It didn't feel particularly unusual, like wearing shorts. If you didn't look closely, it could look like a pair of shorts at first glance. I stepped out of the cabin, feeling unsure. The others' reception reassured me. Soon, I had forgotten what I was wearing and was engaged in lively conversation. An hour later, someone mentioned they were hungry. Everyone agreed to go eat first. I decided to join them, but in my pants. But where were they? Right, in the changing room. Oh, many people had been in there by now. I searched for my pants. Nothing. And my wallet was in there. I panicked. I left the changing room, and by sheer coincidence, my gaze fell into the garbage bin. There was my wallet. I pulled it out. The cash was gone, but everything else was still there. I was relieved. There wasn't much money in it anyway. I went to the others. My pants are gone, and so is my cash. Everyone showed concern, and each searched for my pants. To no avail. I thought, no problem. I'll buy a new one. But there were no men's pants in this store. The sizes alone made the thought of getting one of the existing pants impossible. And the pants were way too feminine. Much more feminine than my skirt. I resigned myself to my fate. I paid for the skirt with plastic money and we went to a nearby restaurant. Soon I had forgotten what I was wearing again. During our conversations, I brought up the lack of pockets. Where to put my wallet and tissues? The others had their belongings in a jacket or a belly bag. One of the wives accompanying the men, women in pants, men in skirts, offered me a bag. She had just bought a new handbag and didn't want her old one anymore. It was plain black. Well, that didn't make things any better, so I took it. Finally, I didn't have to keep my wallet in my hand all the time. I felt a little strange when we went back to the boutique, carrying the bag over my shoulder. For inexplicable reasons, this bothered me more than the skirt. Upon arriving at the boutique, the owner had found my keys. She expressed concern about the missing pants and offered me another skirt and matching stockings as compensation. I thought that was very kind, as she wasn't obligated to do that. Of course, everyone urged me to try everything on immediately. Since the changing room was occupied, I just pulled the skirt over the other one. It was a pleated skirt that reached my knees. The pleats were sewn together at the top, only opening at the bottom like a kilt. The length was similar, and the label also said kilt. What I didn't like was the color. Not plaid, but solid in a shade between pale yellow and amber. The knee-high stockings I put on next were exactly the same color. Now only my knees were uncovered. I wanted to look at myself in a mirror, but the only one was in the changing room, and it was constantly occupied. An hour later, I said goodbye. No pants, but I had 2 skirts, and matching stockings, as well as a handbag. On my way to the car, I received many surprised looks. Why? Everyone had ignored us before. At the car, I reached for the keys in my handbag, or at least I tried to. First, I pulled out a lipstick, then mascara. Apparently, the woman hadn't emptied it very thoroughly. Next to me, an elderly couple was staring at me. In one hand, I had the cosmetics. In the other, I was searching for the keys in my handbag, while the wind gently lifted my skirt, revealing the second skirt underneath. I would have loved to sink into the ground immediately. What a day. Due to the distraction in the boutique, I had completely forgotten to buy groceries. Well, the present wasn't that urgent, but I needed groceries. So I stopped at the next supermarket, only becoming conscious of my skirt again when getting out of the car. Here, I caused quite a stir. People were pointing at me. Just quickly buy the few things I needed and then get out of here. I had never rushed through a supermarket so fast, but at the checkout, I had to wait and be stared at again. Finally, I was through. And as I walked through the theft detector, the alarm went off. I had to go back to the cashier and empty my handbag in front of everyone. Keys, wallet, tissues, lipstick, mascara, eyeliner, nail polish, and a tampon. I turned beet red. The cashier identified the nail polish as the culprit. She called the store manager and I had to follow him to his office. He was quite young and stared at me for a moment. I didn't like that at all. Why are you staring at me? This is the first time I've seen a transvestite in real life. I'm not a transvestite. Then why are you wearing a skirt and these cosmetics? That's a long story. Good, I have time. I didn't steal anything. I'll pay for it anyway, and I'll even add $50. That doesn't work. But of course, we can also call the police. No, that's okay. I recounted the events of the day. The store manager was amused, but he apparently hadn't had enough. Okay, I have a suggestion. I want to see a real transvestite. You use the stuff from your handbag. I'll even add a pack of eyeshadow. Then you can go. No, I won't do that. Okay, then the police. He reached for the phone. Wait, He feasted on my helplessness. Now? Okay, I'll do it. Good. Then let's get started. As I applied the lipstick with trembling hands, he called for a clerk and spoke to her quietly. Shortly after, she came back with some things. An employee forgot this in her locker a long time ago. Put it on. It was a bra and a white blouse. I looked at him pleadingly, but he just handed me the things resolutely. Maybe the police would be better? No, quickly put on the things and get out of here. I took off my shirt and fumbled with the bra. I could barely get the blouse on with my trembling hands and the tiny buttons on the wrong side. It was a little see-through, so you could see the bra underneath. I couldn't put on makeup. My hands were shaking too much. He called for the clerk again, and she did it routinely with an endless grin. Not long after, I was sitting there with a made-up face, waiting for the nail polish to dry. The store manager used this for a few photos. So, now another coat of nail polish, then you can go. I managed to do it without too much smudging and was sent out with wet nails. How was I supposed to carry my groceries? In retrospect, I told myself that I should have just grabbed a tissue and wiped off the nail polish. But I wasn't capable of thinking rationally at that moment. So I stood behind the cash registers in a corner, waving my hands while being stared at by everyone. Finally, they were dry. I took my things and started my journey home. Upon arriving home, I didn't dare get out of the car. After half an hour, I came to the conclusion that I would have to get out eventually. I waited for nobody to be around and fled to my apartment as quickly as possible. There, I stood in front of the mirror to assess the damage. Except for my hair, a woman stared back at me. First, I noticed my lower body. While it was a kilt in design, the delicate pastel color made it very feminine. And the knee-high stockings. The material was very fine, I hadn't noticed that before. Not like the thick wool stockings you usually see with a kilt. And then the same pastel color. How could I possibly wear something like that? The blouse was of course very feminine, especially with the visible bra underneath. Only the breasts were missing. Because I was quite slim, I made a fairly passable woman, if not for a few hairs peeking through the stockings. The red nails matched the lips perfectly, and the eyes were very well made up. The woman who had made me up was a master. Now a new problem dawned on me. How do I get this off? I didn't have nail polish remover, and did I need something special for the eye makeup? I had no idea. I had to go to the drugstore. Sobering thought, there were two possibilities. Change and go, shopping with red nails and maybe makeup, or like I was. After a moment of doubt, I decided on the second option. I stuffed tissues into my bra and artfully wrapped a silk scarf around my head to hide my short hair. Instead of the somewhat clunky shoes, I took my white canvas sneakers. That didn't look bad at all. Pulled the stockings down and up again, and the hair was no longer visible. Only the few around my knees. Hopefully they wouldn't be noticed. I gathered my courage, grabbed my handbag, and went to the car. I took the shortest route to the drugstore, straight to the cosmetics department, where I quickly bought nail polish remover and makeup remover. I couldn't believe it, but I didn't stand out. Why did I get through so easily as a woman? At home, I undressed and removed the makeup, then took a relaxing shower. Then my old self stared back at me. As I got dressed again, I saw the other skirt. Now I wanted to see myself in it. I put on the short brown skirt, a light t-shirt, and chunky knee-high socks. Yes, that looked completely different. Not feminine at all, it even looked really good. That evening, Peter had called me and checked up on me. I didn't tell him about my adventure, but just said that the brown skirt was very nice, but I didn't like the other one that much. After a few minutes of conversation, we made plans to have a few beers together. And when the time came 2 days later, I didn't know what to wear. Did he expect me in a skirt? I hadn't asked. Why not? Let's see how it would go in public with the brown skirt. No handbag and no makeup. And it went well. Peter was also wearing a skirt, almost floor length. The evening went without incident. A few weeks later, I had become friends with Peter. We met every few days, and as a result, my wardrobe had grown by a few more skirts. A long one, but all the others in the style of the brown one, which was still my favorite. I was still a bit unsure in some situations, which amused Peter very much. During one of our meetings, we talked about the mountains, and I let my enthusiasm run wild. He was no less enthusiastic, and so we made plans for a week's vacation in the Alps in late summer. Of course, he insisted on one particular detail. No pants, just skirts for a whole week. Well, why not? Shortly after, the time came and we were in our small alpine hut. Incredibly cozy, just the way I liked it. Peter had to check, of course, if there were really no pants in my suitcase. Of course there weren't. On the contrary, we had even more choice because the cupboard wasn't empty. The last residents had left behind a few dirndls. I didn't examine them closely. They were apparently simple models, like the ones the dairymaids wore to work, and probably left behind by them. The next morning was cold. At this time of year, at this altitude, it's not much above 0 degrees. There was only a wood-burning stove, and the fire had gone out overnight. Peter saw me shivering. Very intelligently, he asked me, "Cold?" Fast learner. Skirts have disadvantages, the legs are cold. Thick stockings don't help either. Why don't you put on a longer one? I only have one and it's very thin. Besides, I don't like it. Wrap yourself in a blanket, I'll get the stove going. Shortly after, it was warm again. And how are we going to do this later? We can't take the stove with us. It will warm up very quickly, and you won't freeze while hiking, guaranteed. Okay, but what if we take a break? I'm starting to like the idea of skirts less and less. Just wait, you'll like it. And if it gets cold, you can put on tights. Tights? I don't have any. Isn't that too feminine? I don't mean fancy tights. Thick cotton tights, like the ones worn in sports. Okay, when we get back, we'll go shopping. The day was beautiful. Soon there was no talk of freezing. On the contrary, I started to sweat and found the airy skirt very pleasant. As we returned from our hike, we enjoyed a few beers until sunset. Wonderful. Then it quickly got cool and we went inside. With the warm stove and the kerosene lamp, a cozy atmosphere quickly emerged. A great day. The next morning, I regretted forgetting to go shopping. But then it warmed up quickly again. Unfortunately, I twisted my ankle shortly after we set off. Not very bad, but I didn't want to hike anymore. But I didn't want to spoil Peter's day either, so I returned to the hut alone and sat in the warm sun to enjoy the great view. Vacation can't get much better than this. A few hours later, clouds gathered and it quickly got cold. I went inside. I wanted to light the stove, but there were no matches or lighters anywhere, and no tights. I didn't want to rummage through Peter's things, so I took the blanket again. But the thick blanket quickly became uncomfortable, and I had to keep holding it all the time. Reading a book wasn't fun like that. I looked around for alternatives. There was nothing. In the wardrobe, besides my clothes, there were only the dirndls. The dirndls? I examined them more closely. There were 5 of them. One made of fine fabric and elaborately crafted, the others simple everyday wear. One looked wonderfully warm. I didn't think long, but tested whether it fit while shivering. It did, amazingly. Like it was made for me, and it reached down to my calves. Together with the thick knee-high socks, I was finally warmly dressed, and nobody could see me up here on the Alp anyway. An hour later, Peter came. He had turned back early because of the approaching bad weather. He was quite surprised to see me in the dirndl. It's the only warm thing here, and I didn't have any matches. How am I supposed to light the stove? Without a word, he reached into the only drawer and pulled out several packs of matches. How had I not seen them? And how did I stand before Peter now? Peter, you have to believe me, I didn't see them. It's okay. You don't need to make excuses for putting on the dirndl. It's really beautiful. Only at the last second did I see the slight grin. He was making fun of me. Well, if you think it's so great, there are more. Help yourself. He wanted to protest at first, but the cold temperature made him shiver, and he was probably a little tempted as well. Soon he was wearing a dirndl too. Then the stove slowly warmed the hut. Although no longer strictly necessary, I kept the dirndl on. It got darker and darker outside. A thunderstorm was brewing, spreading a doomsday atmosphere. Then the first heavy drops fell. It was a very special atmosphere. Safe and warm in the hut, we watched the spectacle unfolding before us. Shortly after, there was a knock on the door. Quickly changing clothes was impossible. These dirndls were closed with endless buttons. So I shrugged and opened the door. 2 hikers stood outside. As one so often sees, unfortunately, without any equipment, in shorts and sneakers. One spoke to me. Can we, maybe? As he saw that he had a man in front of him, he fell silent. It was quite clear to me what he was thinking now. Come in, the thunderstorm is going to start in earnest. As if to confirm, it thundered with immense volume, reflected by the mountains. This quickly motivated them to come inside. They looked at us awkwardly, and we were no less embarrassed. Forget about nobody seeing me in the dirndl. Sit down, and don't worry about our appearance. It's an unfortunate accident. While the storm raged outside, I told a story that was mostly true. That my miniskirt was too cold and I had nothing else, I left out of caution. Instead, I said my things were wet. They believed it and calmed down, and now introduced themselves. Klaus and Jörg. By the way, you're not exactly dry or warm either. There are still dirndls, we don't have anything else, unfortunately. Jörg immediately objected. No, not necessary. The storm will be over soon, then we'll go again. Go? Forget it, look outside. In the Alps, you have to expect snow even in summer, and now it was almost autumn. The heavy rain had turned to snow. Everything was white. You won't get far in the snow with your shoes, not to mention that every stream has become a river, which you can't cross anymore. That was certainly a problem. There were no bridges over many streams, and usually a big step was enough. That wouldn't work over the rushing currents anymore. You can stay here, there's hardly any other possibility. Our wives are waiting for us. No problem. My phone works even in bad weather. Tell your wives and then we'll make ourselves comfortable. There's enough to eat and drink. They called and let them know. They didn't want to change clothes at first until their wet things became too uncomfortable and cold. Soon, 4 men in dirndls were sitting together comfortably. It turned into a really great evening. After a hearty, delicious meal, we delved into red wine, schnapps, and beer. The situation had something very special. The atmosphere in the hut with the kerosene lamp, far from civilization in a cozy, warm room. And everyone in a dirndl.